When Marilyn Monroe died in 1962, the world thought it lost a legend. But here's the truth. Hollywood had already killed her years before. Her body just gave up at 36. This is the horrifying story of that system. During Hollywood's golden age, the shining stars were actually prisoners. And Marilyn Monroe was the most ruthless victim of this system. When Norma Jean Baker knocked on studio doors in 1946, the 20-year-old young woman didn't know yet. She would never be free again. That contract she signed at 20th Century Fox wasn't just a business deal. It was slavery paperwork. But the most shocking part was how this system actually worked. The studio system controlled Hollywood in the 1950s. Moguls like Darryl Zanuck had turned stars into commodities. "They're our property," Zanuck would say. "When they work, who they date, even what they eat, that's all our decision." They told Marilyn on her first day, "You're not Norma Jean anymore. You're a product, and products don't talk, they just sell." She was forced to work 16 hours a day. They gave her sleeping pills so she wouldn't feel tired. They gave her energy pills so she could work more, but worse was yet to come. In 1950, she was introduced to Johnny Hyde. The ruthless 53-year-old agent was introduced to 24-year-old Marilyn as her protector. But in reality, he was a control mechanism. Mary Peterson, who was Hyde's assistant, confessed years later, Johnny completely controlled Marilyn. What she ate, drank, who she met with, everything was controlled. When she tried to resist, Peterson doesn't finish her sentence, because everyone knew what happened to those who resisted. But Hollywood's cruelest weapon hadn't been used yet. During the filming of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Marilyn rebelled for the first time. She told director Howard Hawks, "I don't want to do this scene." The next day, the studio's security chief came. "Marilyn, let's have a little talk," he said. The conversation lasted 3 hours. When Marilyn came out, her eyes were red and her hands were shaking. From that day on, she never rebelled again. What was discussed in that room? Former security guard Rick Martinez. We made threats. We threatened her family, her career, even her life. In 1953, filming for How to Marry a Millionaire began. Marilyn was now a big star, but she had no freedom. Every move was being watched. The studio had assigned a special caretaker for her, Natasha Lytess. Her official job was acting coach. Her real job was to control Marilyn 24/7. What Lytess wrote in her diary was horrifying. "Marilyn is very tired today. I gave her 3 white pills, 2 red pills for energy. I also prepared green pills for sleep. The studio wants it this way," Lytess wrote. 26-year-old Marilyn was taking an average of 8 to 10 pills per day. They told her it was vitamins. In reality, they were addictive chemicals. Dr. Lee Siegel, a Hollywood doctor from that era, "We did everything to keep actors on their feet. We didn't care about ethics or anything. But chemical control was just one part of the system." In 1954, she married Joe DiMaggio. She thought she'd finally be happy, but the studio wouldn't allow it. 3 days after her honeymoon, she was called back. The 7-year itch filming was starting. "But I'm on my honeymoon," Marilyn said. "Marriage doesn't interfere with work," they replied. That famous subway grate scene. Marilyn didn't want to do it. "It's too embarrassing," she said. She was forced to. When Joe DiMaggio watched that scene on set, what happened next showed just how ruthless Hollywood could be. DiMaggio went crazy. "You're displaying my wife like merchandise," he yelled. Studio head Billy Wilder coldly replied, "She's our merchandise. You just rented her." That night, Marilyn told Joe through tears, "They don't see me as human, just a money-making machine." 9 months later, their marriage was over. Marilyn had collapsed, but the studio didn't care. "This is why you shouldn't fall in love," they told her. The real torture was about to begin. In 1955, she tried to start her own production company, Marilyn Monroe Productions. She was dreaming of freedom. The studio immediately took action. First, it was leaked to the media. Marilyn Monroe has gone crazy. She's acting out of control. Then job offers were cut off. Then those horrifying photos surfaced. Nude photos taken in 1949, when she was broke, suddenly appeared. Playboy announced they would publish them. Marilyn panicked. "This will ruin me," she said. But she couldn't reach Hugh Hefner. The studio said they would help, of course for a price. She signed a new contract, harsher, more restrictive. Now the studio controlled 90% of her life. "I became a slave to be free," she wrote in her diary. In 1956, she married Arthur Miller. The intellectual writer promised to save her from Hollywood, but the system targeted Miller too. Miller's past communist connections were exposed. It was the McCarthy era. The Red Scare began. The FBI put Miller under surveillance. Marilyn was given a shocking choice. "Divorce your husband, or you'll both be finished," they told Marilyn. Miller could go to prison. "You'll be blacklisted too." Marilyn resisted. "I love him," she said. The studio smiled. "Is love more important than your career?" During the filming of Some Like It Hot during this period, she was under horrible pressure. Some scenes were reshot over 100 times. They said she couldn't focus. In reality, she was having a mental breakdown. Director Billy Wilder. Marilyn was like a robot now, soulless. In 1960, she divorced Miller. The system had won. But Marilyn was different now. Drug-addicted, depressed, controlled. On the set of Let's Make Love, she worked with Clark Gable. Gable was shocked when he saw Marilyn's condition. "This girl is dying," he told the director. Gable was right. Marilyn was fading away more each day. But Hollywood's final blow was yet to come. In 1962, filming for Something's Got to Give began. Marilyn was constantly sick, constantly late, constantly forgetful. She was 36 but looked like a 60-year-old woman. The studio got impatient. They decided she's not bringing in money anymore. Dean Martin withdrew from the film. Marilyn was fired. "I've worked for this studio for 16 years, Marilyn cried. "Now you're throwing me in the trash." Studio head Peter Levathes coldly replied, "Business is just business." Marilyn's interviews in her final months were horrifying. "I'm not human to them, just a money machine." But the machine broke down, her psychiatrist doctor. Ralph Greenson's notes, "Patient is paranoid, depressive, and suicidal." The Hollywood system has completely destroyed her. What happened on the night of August 5th, 1962, was Hollywood's final victory. That night, Marilyn was alone at home. Her last film had been canceled. Her agency had dropped her. She'd been kicked out of Hollywood. At 36, alone with a ruined career. Housekeeper Eunice Murray remembers Marilyn's last words. "They destroyed me. It started when I was just a little girl. Now, there's nothing left." Her body was found in the morning. Official statement, suicide. Reality, Hollywood murder. What physically killed Marilyn Monroe were the drugs. But what killed her spiritually was years of systematic destruction. She had been crushed between the gears of the Hollywood machine. Former studio head Samuel Goldwyn confessed years later, "We made them stars, but we also destroyed them. That was our business, but perhaps the most tragic thing was that Marilyn wasn't alone. Judy Garland died at 47, destroyed by the same system. Ava Gardner became an alcoholic. Elizabeth Taylor attempted suicide multiple times. They were all victims of the same system. Hollywood's golden age was actually a dark age. The stars were shining, but they were burning from within. How did the studio system work? First, they found talented young people. Most came from poor families, were desperate. They sold them dreams. "We'll make you a star." Then came the contracts. These contracts weren't just business agreements. They were chains that controlled every detail of their lives. What they ate, what they drank, who they met with, even when they had sex, was all controlled. Marilyn's contract stated, "The artist cannot marry, divorce, become pregnant, or enter into any personal relationship without the studio's written permission." Then psychological manipulation began. They were constantly belittled, devalued. "You're nothing, we created you," was said constantly. What was constantly told to Marilyn, "You're just a pretty face. You have no brain, no talent. Without us, you'd rot in the gutter." Chemical control was also in play. Pills given under the name vitamins were actually amphetamines, barbiturates, and other addictive substances. Stimulants during the day to keep them up, sedatives at night to put them to sleep. Dr. Max Jacobson, Hollywood's famous doctor, feel-good, confessed the truth years later. We made them chemically dependent to control them. They had no other choice. Marilyn was taking 10 to 15 pills a day. These pills created not just physical, but mental dependency. She couldn't think without the pills. Social isolation was also part of the tactics. They were separated from old friends, from family. They were only allowed to meet with studio people. Marilyn's sister Bernice explained years later, "I had to get permission from the studio to see Marilyn, to see my own sister." Financial control was also there. Most of the money they earned stayed at the studio. It was taken under the names of expenses, taxes, agency commissions. Marilyn earned millions but was constantly broke. Accounting expert Irving Stein, 85% of what Marilyn earned stayed at the studio. We only gave her pocket money. Media manipulation was also part of the system. Gossip columnists were under studio control. They would write desired news, cover up unwanted news. Hedda Hopper, famous gossip writer, wrote in her diary, "We weren't journalists. We were part of the studio's propaganda machine." Marilyn's smallest mistake was magnified and turned into scandal. This put her under even more control. Sexual abuse was also the dark side of the system. Young actors were called to special meetings, subjected to abuse by powerful producers and directors. Marilyn had told her close friend Shelley Winters, "Sometimes to get roles, I had to do horrible things." To survive in this system, some turned to alcohol, some to drugs, and some to suicide. Judy Garland experienced the same torture at MGM, which she started at 16. She worked 20 hours a day, constantly taking pills. When she died at 47, there were 10 different drugs in her body. James Dean, feeling worn down by the system, turned to fast cars and dangerous sports. He died at 24. Montgomery Clift, unable to withstand Hollywood pressure, mixed alcohol and pills and died at 45. They were all victims of the same system, but none became as iconic as Marilyn Monroe, because Marilyn was both the system's greatest success and greatest failure. She was a success because they had made her a worldwide symbol. She was a failure because they had completely destroyed her. After 1962, the Hollywood system slowly changed. Actors formed unions, began protecting their rights. But the change came too late for Marilyn. Today's Hollywood still isn't perfect. But it's not as ruthless as it was in the 1950s. The Me Too movement, new protection mechanisms, more transparent contracts. But Marilyn Monroe's story should not be forgotten. Because she is living proof of how a system can completely destroy a person. She wasn't just a star. She was a victim, a warning, a symbol. How did Hollywood destroy Marilyn Monroe? Systematically, ruthlessly, deliberately. And nobody ever paid for it. Marilyn Monroe died on August 5, 1962. But in reality, she died in 1946 when she first set foot in Hollywood. Only a beautiful symbol remained. Emptied, soul stolen, life taken away. This was Hollywood's greatest crime, and it was never prosecuted.